Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Ken Lundin, who's the founder of Ken Lundin and Associates and the creator of the Sales Alpha Roadmap. Ken, welcome to the program.
Well, Mike, let's rock and roll. I'm excited to be here and can't wait to get into this with you.
Yeah, I am really looking forward to talking to you too, because I love when people have taken their body of work and knowledge and come up with something that feels so good as a roadmap. Just show me the way. So the Sales Alpha Roadmap, excellent, really, really good. So give us a little background on your entrepreneurial journey and what led you to this point in your career.
Oh, we'll do the short version because there were ups and downs, and there were all the things. You know, if everybody were as successful as their LinkedIn profile, then I don't know that anybody would have ever failed, and I've certainly had my share of them. So, bought my first business in 2006, went through the Great Recession, and promptly got my head handed to me. Filed bankruptcy in 2011, and then had to kind of, for the last 10 years, kind of rethink about what was important and how this all went down. Yeah. I had to go back in and take a mid-level sales job, just super humbling coming from, I'd been running an $80 million organization before I bought my business, and then all of a sudden it was like 6 years didn't exist in anybody else's opinion. Went through that process and then, got on the horse and spent probably about 4.5 years just really trying to get back at it. Like when you hit a lull in your life, a lot of times the moment isn't the actual low point. So, spent about 4 years, came through it and really started to figure out, hey, at the end of the day, the biggest thing that happens is, sales kind of cures most problems. It would have cured a bunch of problems for me in my first business. Took that experience, got my head fixed, and doubled the company, went to another company, doubled the company, and then decided I wanted to kind of take off. And instead of just single focus on one company at a time, I wanted to be able to help multiple companies at a time. So we launched Ken Lundin and Associates. And now we take that Sales Alpha Roadmap, or almost like that engineering mindset, to how we help companies grow.
One thing that I heard through that introduction is you learned from and built from mistakes and hard times. It wasn't, the first job I had, I was a rock star and I led the team and I really don't know how I did it, but hey, I can show you some tips that I think I might have. You really had some hiccups in your career given external circumstances, but you could have stuck your head in the sand and said no more, but you persevered through, you learned lessons, and now you're like, okay, now let's recreate myself personally, professionally, and let's build off of that. So I love that introduction of your journey.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it certainly was life lessons, and I just think at the end of the day, if you can be, for most part, if you can just be humble enough to understand that you're not going to get everything right and be cool with that. Yep. Like as a successful entrepreneur, I think you have to define failure very differently than what the general public does. So that's what I've done. It's pivoting. Go ahead.
Yeah, because what's the old saying about failure? Failure is not a definition of you, it's just an event, and you move from that. It doesn't define you, and that really is a big thing. Is people tend to go, oh well, I failed at this, whatever that failure might have looked like, but then it really isn't you. It's not your full story. It's that blip, and I think that's a huge thing to understand. What are some of the things that you were able to learn in how to keep that mindset strong through that time?
I think the biggest lesson that I learned from it, and kind of start with the real big one, is where to spend my energy, like my negative energy, my positive energy, what to do with that. Because as an example, I looked at things back in the first business and I said, oh yeah, because of this, and I was putting all this energy into events I had no control over. Yeah. Right. And a good example of that today is, you've got brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, relatives, best friends not talking today because of the politics of the last 5 years in the U.S. or because of COVID or whatever.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, it's because they want other people to change to make them happy instead of just controlling what's in their space. And so for me, the big lesson, from a mindset perspective was your emotional energy. And then the business lesson was don't spread yourself too thin. Adding product lines does not fix the business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. In fact, it could potentially mess things up by confusing people going, what these product lines, what do you actually do? Because look at all of this. So I think that's a really big piece is in the book, Building a Story Brand, Donald Miller talks about that when you confuse, you lose. And maybe expanding product lines is not the right choice.
Yeah, and it's an interesting kind of thing that you run through. I've got a couple of mentors that I work with because we've kind of done that here with our two brands, and we're bringing them together to kind of define the messaging a little bit better. But when I was thinking about launching our marketing agency to complement the sales consulting work we do, I called up one of the guys who saw me go through that back in 2011. I said, hey, I just want to make sure that I'm not making the exact same mistake again.
Mm.
And you got to be okay to ask those questions and learn from it. And like we talked about before, the failure doesn't define you, but so much in today, the way that we use the words, like people are afraid to fail instead of seeking to fail. And I think the successful entrepreneur's journey is really about driving towards something to see if it works. And just know that if you go at it with a hypothesis instead of I'm right, we've made 5 distinct pivots in my business in the last 15 months. You could call them failures, but every one of those pivots has continued to strengthen our journey, and it's helped us double, our total revenues over the course of the last 12 months.
Yeah, I love it. It reminds me of the old saying, you win or you, and people go lose. And I'm like, no, you win or you learn. And, if you win, okay, good. Well, actually, you ought to say you learn from winning. You ought to pause and go, good, there's a win. Why did I get that win? What led to that win? So there should be learning on both sides of the equation, but especially where people would assume or think lose or fail. Really, it's that win or learn.
Yeah, it's almost like the military has this thing they do. My dad is a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, and they have this thing called an after-action report.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is when we're winning, we don't do that as entrepreneurs most of the time.
Yeah.
And when we're losing, we don't want to hear about it because we don't actually want to say, I screwed up.
Yes.
And I think you have to bring that. You have to bring that into your business where you are intentional about figuring out what am I doing really well and what am I doing poorly. And the best way to do that is to continue to move from running your business with your gut to running your business with data.
Yeah, and I think your gut can guide, definitely, but then I think that data has to be considered because too many times, we've got these biases, plural, where it's like, yeah, but the data isn't right because my gut tells me that. Well, let your gut guide you a little bit, but at the end of the day, don't keep throwing good money down a bad rabbit hole because you think your gut's telling you to keep on keeping on.
Yeah, sales and business are very similar in kind of the concept of the following concept. 70 to 75% of what's going on in your business or building your sales team or building the growth and the revenues of your company should be based on sound process and systems.
Yeah.
And then the other 20, 25, 30% is that artistic ability to interpret the data. Like one of our clients, just had a fantastic exit from a company, $200 million in revenue, $200 million in the exit. That was the purchase price. And what's interesting about that is because he's 70% process, that 25 or 30% of using his brain and his gut, he's just naturally faster at it than everybody else.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. How would you scale an organization to a couple $100 million if you didn't have the processes and you didn't have the systems in place?
That's a good point because at the end of the day, there's only X number of hours in the day and there's only one you.
Yeah.
So if you don't have processes, then you can't 10X or 20X or 100X what you've been doing because if it's just you, well, if you tried to work 20 hours a day, that's your cap. or 15 or 10 or 8, there's your cap. So those processes. So is that one of the things that you would say is a secret to growing a business predictably, is making sure of what it takes to succeed and then build processes around that?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And I think the other thing with us is we really we'll work with companies from every stage. From we've got companies as small as a couple $1 million in sales, and then we have publicly traded companies that we work with. What's interesting is the problems are the same in each level. So at 5 million or a billion, it's just the scale of how to fix the problem is very different. And so the big piece of the puzzle, it's really interesting. Even when you look at a publicly traded company, as opposed to the guy or gal who's doing $5 million, they don't have the processes, and their teams are still running things based upon gut and not best practices. So when we talk about processes, we say, yeah, you got to have a process. But then what benchmarks are you basing it on to have any idea whether or not it's actually working? People will come to us and they'll say, oh, we closed 10% of all of our deals. I'm like, oh my gosh, depending on the industry, that could be horrible or great.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And so who knows? That subjectivity, you've got to seek and even if you're wrong, what are the benchmarks that you're going for? And then at each level, we talk about it all the way from the very top of the marketing funnel all the way through to a new customer. And there might be 8 steps in that, and every single one of them has to have a measurement, because then you can tell where you need to dig in and do something better, or where you can double down and really start to push.
So what do you recommend to your clients or execute for your clients regarding finding that data? Is it primary data or secondary data, where primary is we go inside our own organization and we look at the numbers, we call our clients, we look at sales? Or is it secondary, where you go, we don't have the longevity to look inside, so we're going to go to an industry like ours and look for that secondary data?
I think it depends on the size of the company, but in all cases, I would say that you want to actually look at the benchmarks from an outsider's perspective in that secondary data to compare whether or not you're at. You've got to go, okay, first level is what's everybody else doing? Yeah. I'll tell you why that's important in a second. And second level is, and how are we doing versus everybody else, versus the average? What's it going to take to get to be, best in class? Because here's what it comes down to. And I think this is what people miss. Are you growing revenue, or are you growing market share? Because I want our clients to grow market share.
Yes. Because it kind of makes me think, and maybe this is a visual word picture or visual that is accurate or no, but when I think of, are you growing revenue, that's like going really, really, really deep, but then it's only in one silo. If you're growing market share, that's going wide and gives you the potential to go deep in different verticals. But if you've got that market share, that's a solid foundation.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because the market share, and one of the nice things that tells you a few things. If you just want to extrapolate what market share growth tells you, it tells you understand your customers' pains and problems better. It tells you you're doing a better job of communicating and messaging that they want to hear. It probably actually makes you most of the time, it makes you actually more profitable, because it reduces your total customer acquisition costs, right? It reduces your total SG&A as a percentage. So that's why when we talk about market share, yes, we want to grow revenue, and yes, that's what valuations are made on. But protecting that base and growing market share is really the best measurement of how well you're doing as a company, resonating with your clients.
So when you think about your messaging is resonating with the true target audience to meet their needs and solve their problems. Yep, that's what you just said. Well, is there ever a time that you would say, okay, good, we've checked all the boxes, we know our clients' problems, we know how to talk to them, and we're done. Now we just need to keep on pouring grease on the fire? Or do you feel like also, there should be a time where you keep iterating and keep improving, of course, but do you ever recommend to your clients, look, in order to achieve this level of knowing and understanding the clients, we need to pick a vertical. We need to be the industry experts in that vertical, while we're growing market share so that we're fully focused in on what they need. Because otherwise, if we're trying to sell, a common example is, hey, I sell cars, so anybody that drives is a prospect of mine. No, that's pretty wide. You need to really narrow in that target market. What is your approach that way?
Yeah, it depends on where they are. Most of the time, they're trying to get something. We definitely don't want them to boil the ocean. We've got to go really deep and understand somebody's, so you can talk to them in their language about the things they think are important. And so in often cases, I'd say kind of the process goes like this. You dial in at 1 to 3 specific personas within a specific ideal client profile.
Okay.
Ideal client profile being the business and industry level, the demographics, firmographics, and then the personas being the positions. You test that messaging, the way it's converting and marketing and sales and through the pipeline. You test that messaging, where it's coming, where you're actually achieving and beating the benchmarks that you have in place. And then once you've done that, you have 2 choices. We pour gas on the fire because we know that we've got a total addressable market that's much bigger and we can just stay right here because that's the fastest route to growth. Or once you've figured that out, now you've got the process in place that you can add the next ICP or the next persona. So yes, it's as you can see there's a process, it's benchmarked, and then we make a decision.
Yeah. That's to me, that is like 60,000 foot level, not even 30,000 foot. You've got to have all of that stuff in place because that's like getting ready to get ready. And then you get ready to launch your thing, your campaign, your whatever. Now you're ready, aim, fire, so that too many companies just want to go right to fire and execute a campaign because, well, let's just get her done and we'll, jumping our rings on the way down. And many times that's an exercise in futility.
Yeah, and I'll say something that most of your listeners will disagree with, and that is this. Most companies have done a really poor job of defining their ideal client profile or the problems of the people they serve.
Yeah.
Because everybody says, I've got personas, I got this stuff. But marketing's looking at it different from sales looking at it different from marketing, and then you go look at their website. Their website's written entirely about them, not their customer.
Yeah. I often say, hey, what's everyone's favorite radio station? And one time I said that in a group where I knew that they had done their intros and there was like the president of a local radio station. And so I was like, hey guys, raise hands. What's everyone's favorite radio station? And I said, and you, sir, it's not your station, haha. And it's just a speaker's joke of WIIFM. What's in it for me? And the problem is too many times companies are gearing their messaging and what's in it for the company, not what's in it for their target audience. And you need to speak to them as if that target audience was reading it for themselves. Like, rather than saying, well, our company has 30 years ago, say, you will appreciate the fact that, right? I mean, just even little nuances that way. So do you get into the messaging aspects of campaigns with your clients as well?
Yeah, we go pretty deep. I mean, our business model is a little different. So we don't do time and materials. We literally it's a monthly subscription fee, essentially. Think of it like a software. And so with that, our clients can call us whenever they need us, right? So you're hiring a new sales leader, great. You need us to help advise on what the marketing campaigns and the metrics look like, great. You need to lean into, our access of our marketing partners that we work with so you can use them so they'll be more effective. Great. So, yeah, we'll go all over the place down to the commenting and writing messaging when appropriate.
Yeah. Neat. Well, Ken, it's been a real pleasure talking with you. If anyone is interested in reaching out, connecting with you, and seeing some of your methodology might benefit them, and even applying some of your techniques for the sales app roadmap, what's the best way that they can reach out and learn more about you and your company?
Probably the number one way is actually just go ahead and hook up with me on LinkedIn. They can certainly go on the website, will be in the show notes at kenlundin.com. But hook up with me on LinkedIn and say that you heard Mike and I talk here. And we can schedule a free 30 minutes to talk. If you've got something you're going through in your company, you've got something you're trying to figure out, I'm not going to tell you anything because I don't even know you. but we may have some advice that we can help with. And so I offer that free kind of strategy session when I get fortunate and I have the opportunity to talk with people like Mike. And I would say this, come find out why we've had companies raise a Series A this year for $30 million, a company sell for $200 million, a company sell for $500 million, and then a unicorn get valued at $1 billion and $2 billion over the course of the last 8 months. So love to show you. I'm going to have a conversation about how we've been able to drive those results for our clients.
Awesome. Well, Ken, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.